to meet you. Nice to meet you.
And we are live.
Your mother introduced you already. So.
Welcome everybody to the Lighthouse Project. So, holy cow, Rabbi Laredo's in the house, everybody. He just turned like every color under the sun in there. So, a quick background. I'm sure we have here a lot of people representing Hollywood and representing Rabbi Laredo's strong following up there. We started being Rabbi Laredo. We've been talking now almost about a year. We started doing some classes, satellite classes, up in Hollywood for a couple of classes here and there. Unfortunately, we couldn't go through the masses. It was a lot more difficult than expected. But I want to just say personally that it's a huge merit and an honor that we have Rabbi Laredo here, who B'ezrat Hashem will be with us now following every single week moving forward on Wednesday nights here live. For the people that are going to be watching in South Florida through social media, try to make an effort to come out here. It's a special treat to have him here. We're going to be definitely marketing and pushing a lot more of having people come. A lot of people don't even know that you're even here tonight. So that's number one. For all those people that are watching all around the world, there'll be thousands and thousands of views of this class, God willing, within the next couple of days, which is very exciting. And a lot of people are going to see a new angle of what the Lighthouse Project is bringing with another Sephardic flair. That's always nice to have. I myself happen to be Sephardic, Breslev, Ashkenazic, and Chabad in one. And I always love having the representation of the Sephardic world here at Lighthouse Project because it brings a little bit of Musar, and yet at the same time, with this face over here, there's a little bit of Chesed with it. So it's a nice thing to have. And with that being said, tonight's classes, normally the rabbi would be saying it, but I'll be saying it for tonight, I guess. It's in honor of the Refuah Shlema, of Tevora Fega Bat Reisel, Menachem Mendel Ben Sarabasha, and Chaya Bat Hana. And with that being said, Kavod Rabbi, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And we'd like to thank Michael Ben Melech for inviting me to join everyone this evening and the amazing project that he has started and flourished with. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless you, Michael, Amen. Your wife, your children, your whole family, Amen. And all of the participants who are here this evening, all participants online, and those that will be watching this B'ezrat Hashem. Should be a tremendous merit to us all.
Amen. Amen.
Wednesday nights, for the past year and a half, I've been dedicating towards learning a special sefer, a special book, special author. It is on the Torah, on the weekly portion, and the sefer is called Zera Shimshon. Zera Shimshon means the offspring of Shimshon, but what does that mean to me? What does that mean to you? Well, it means a lot to me, and I'm going to share that with everyone here this evening, something very special. The Zera Shimshon was an Italian rabbi, leader. He was born in 1707, and he passed away in 1779. He was at one point the rabbi of 7 cities in Italy simultaneously. He was the chief rabbi of Italy. And he was a tremendous orator, writer, leader, counselor, teacher, you name it. And unfortunately, he only had one son who passed away at a very young age. And this hurt the rabbi because what does every person want? What does every parent want? They want to have children, grandchildren, descendants to uphold and to carry the Torah and the ethics and the morals that they would like. What they lived for, they wanted to live through in their children. And unfortunately didn't have that opportunity. So he said, what is going to be my children? Who are going to be my children? What am I going to be able to do for the Jewish world if I cannot give human beings to them? He said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book of my novelties on the Torah. So that's what he did. He comprised the Zera Shimshon. His name was Rabbi Shimshon Chaim Nachmani of Italy. So what he did was he said, I'm going to write a book and call it the offsprings of Shimshon, meaning that anybody who will ever learn from this book, automatically, he says, I adopt you as my son or daughter. And with that, when your father or your mother is the king or queen, well, we're going to get to that at the end of the class. We'll see how amazing that feels. And he writes, one of the very few authors in his introduction, that anybody who studies his Torah will see blessings and see merit. There are very few, we could count them on one hand, of how many authors write in their introduction a promise, a guarantee that if you learn from his book, you will see health, blessing, happiness, parnasa, livelihood. So to me, I saw that, I read that, I was told about it, and I got interested. Why not? It's already great to learn. Why not learn with some extra fringe benefits? And so we started, and many miracles have happened since, to many people who have joined the classes and learned from the classes. So the primary reason why we learn Torah is because God told us to, and we want to get connected to God and get inspired by His holy Torah. But here we have an extra benefit, that not only are we going to be inspired by these novel ideas, these beautiful ideas, but we're also going to have an extra special promise and blessing from the author. So that's just as a mini introduction to the topic, or at least the book that we will be learning from regularly on Wednesday nights with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the help of God. As an introduction to this week's Torah portion, I'm going to ask anyone who cares enough, this Shabbat, if you're able to see, if you're too far, maybe you need some binoculars to see, maybe if you're in the women's section. But if you open the Torah scroll for this week's Torah portion, there is something which stands out, and it's the only Torah portion this happens to. Normally, when there's a new Torah portion, a new parasha, imagine if you were typing the Torah, you'd hit an enter and it started a new line. Or you'd hit tab to give you an indent. You'd have a new paragraph. You'd have something signaling that the Torah is starting a new parasha, a new portion right then and there. But this week, for Parashat Vayechi, the last Torah portion in the book of Genesis, we don't find this. We don't find an enter. We don't find a tab. We don't find an indent. We don't find a new paragraph. And why? So the Zohar, in this week's Torah portion, gives 3 answers to why there was no new paragraph set for this week's Torah portion. Number 1, the Zohar says, in the name of Rabbi Yaakov, that it's called a parasha stuma. Stuma means it's closed, because there's no indent, there's no enter, it's not a new paragraph. And he says, this is a closed parasha because with the death of Jacob, the final patriarch, the eyes of Bnai Israel were closed. What does that mean they were closed? Well, obviously it was closed from sadness, but the Zohar continues to explain that the illumination of the teaching and the understanding of Torah was not to be the same post Jacob's passing. Remember, there's a trilogy. There's Abraham, there's Isaac, there's Jacob. There's only 3 patriarchs. There's Moses. We're not comparing. But these are the 3 founders, the foundations of our nation. Every Jew can say that they were related to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not every Jew is related to Moses. He's not everyone's father. He's everyone's teacher. He's everyone's deliverer. He's everyone's messenger. But this was something special that Jacob had. He was the final stamp of being our patriarch. So by his passing, his unfortunate passing, dimmed the light of connection and understanding to Torah that would never be the same again. It would be different. It will be great when Moses eventually brings the Torah down from God, from Shamayim, from heaven, but it will not be the same. It's number one. That's the first answer. Rabbi Yehuda gives another answer. Second answer Rabbi Yehuda says is, from the moment that Jacob passed away, it was a closed parasha, right? There's no indent. There's no new paragraph. From then, something very sad started to happen, and the Jewish people started to feel the oppression and the suffering at the hands of the Egyptian people. This happened only after Jacob passed away. Yet we know, we're going to start next week's Torah portion, that only after Joseph and his brothers passed away did the slavery and the oppression really start. So which one was it? There's a great Chacham from Prague, the Maharal Prague. I'm sure we've all heard of him. He wrote a very special and important, work on the Torah, explanation on the Torah. And he writes that when Jacob passed away, there was not an organized fashion of oppressing and cause suffering to the Jewish people. It was sporadic. It was from time to time. Because after all, Jacob's children were still alive. But when Joseph and his brothers all passed away, the oppression became something regular. It became something that was all the time. And that was something very sad. But listen to the third answer. The third answer, in my opinion, is the greatest answer of them all. Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, when something doesn't have a separation, what does that mean? That they're connected. So let's take a guess, or let's investigate. What was the last verse in the previous Torah portion speaking about? And let's connect that concept to the beginning of this Torah portion. So look at what the Torah says. The Torah says, chapter 47, verse 27. This is the last verse of the previous parasha, Parashat Vayechi. Vayechi Israel be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen. That the Jewish people are settling and they live in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, the land that Joseph specifically set aside for them. Vayechazu ba, and they took a holding in the land. Vayifru vayirbu meod, and they became fruitful and they multiplied tremendously. The Mefarshim, the Zohar, tells us that at this point, for those 17 years Jacob lived with the Jewish people in Egypt, the Jewish people lived like kings. They were happy. They felt good. They had their own room. They had their land. They had their homes. They had food. Remember, it was a time of famine. They had their family. And they were free from any harm. And that was something they never experienced. And they were very happy and enthusiastic about that. Comes the beginning of this week's Torah portion. The Zohar says, what does it say, the parasha? Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. And Yaakov lives in the land of Egypt for 17 years. The Zohar says, Rabbi Shimon explains, that this was the first time that Jacob was able to enjoy life. The same way all of the Jewish people were enjoying life only when they came to Egypt, Jacob now was enjoying life for the first time. Now let's think about it. Let's do a little run through of Jacob's life. It started from the womb, started from his mother's belly. He was already fighting with his twin brother. And that it didn't end there, believe me. The next 63 years, day in, day out, day in, day out. His nemesis, Esav, they were butting heads non-stop. Until he had to find a way to take away a blessing from someone who was undeserving. Next thing he knows, he has to skip town. He goes Maybe he had a little bit of a nice time or a special time for 14 years in the yeshiva, in the study hall of Shem Be'ever, but he was still on the run. He was still being pursued. And then he gets to his good-for-nothing father-in-law who tricked him daily. Daily. This was before he got married to his daughters, after he got married, when he had children, when he left once, he was brought back, then he left a second time, then he was pursued. It was non-stop. He leaves. He leaves, and now he's about to confront his brother who he hasn't seen for 34 years, and he's petrified. What's he going to do? He prepares for war, he prepares gifts, he prays, but he's stressed. He's not having an easy and enjoyable life. He meets him, saved by the bell. Again, God's on his side. Next thing he knows, his unfortunate daughter, Dinah, was assaulted by Shem, a prince. Obviously not a great thing. What's the next point? His wife gives birth to, his favorite wife, Rachel, gives birth to their second child, Benjamin, and unfortunately passes away in childbirth. Another unfortunate tragedy. Comes home to his parents and has to face his brother again. He asks for a little bit of relaxation. He's back with his parents. Boom, Josef gets kidnapped and sold and he thinks he's dead. What's the next thing? Judah has an affair with his own daughter-in-law and an embarrassment for Jacob. Besides for the embarrassment that Jacob had when his two other sons, Shimon and Levi, completely obliterated the city of Shechem. So Jacob was having a hard life. Just to add one more thing to it, is after he already gave up on Joseph, thought Joseph passed away, then his brothers come back in the famine and say, we need to bring Benjamin, your new favorite, to Egypt. The ruler wants to see him. He's like, what do you want from me? My whole life, I've been suffering. You want to take the last thing I have? Jacob really had a hard life. This was, the Zohar says, his time of enjoyment. His time where he could be with his children and his grandchildren and live in a land with a little bit of normalcy. And this was those 17 years. That connection. Before we continue, I want to shed light on a midrash. The midrash tells us that our forefathers were each prescribed to live 180 years. That was what they were supposed to be given on this world. So let's look at our patriarchs. Our first, Abraham, how old did he live till? Well, not 180. He lived till 175. So what happened to those 5 years? Why didn't he live to his fullest capacity? Well, God made an amazing miracle and merit for Abraham. He took his life 5 years prior in order to spare him from seeing his very own grandchild degenerate and turn into a monstrous human being at the young age of 15. Remember, he had 2 grandchildren from Yitzchak. He had Jacob and Esav. Jacob was amazing, he was very righteous and pious, and Esav was not. The twins were born, Jacob and Esav were born, on Abraham's 160th birthday. And at their 15th birthday, his 175th birthday, Abraham passes away, and on that very same day, Esav committed horrible crimes. Idolatry, adultery, murder, theft, blasphemy. Horrible things at the age of 15. And all of that happened right at the moment after Abraham passed away. God said, I prefer to take you so your own eyes don't need to bear the suffering and the heart-breaking moments of seeing your grandchild turn into this monstrous human being. He took 5 years away. That's Abraham. Isaac was the only of the patriarchs who lived to his fullest capacity to 180 years. Now let's look at Jacob. The Torah, the beginning of this week's portion, tells us, Vayechi yemei Yaakov shenei chayav. The years of Jacob's life was Sheva Shanim, 7 years, ve'arba'im umat shana, and 140. So 147 years. Quick math. Why did he not live till his fullest capacity of 180? He's 33 years short. I understand he had a hard life, but did that take a toll on him or not? So the Dad Zikenim, one of our commentaries on the Torah, he brings another midrash that tells us that unfortunately Jacob did do something which caused his premature death. And that was, when Joseph comes after bringing his whole family to Egypt, he introduces his family to Pharaoh. Mind you, Pharaoh is no simple individual. He was a genius. He knew all the languages of the globe besides for Hebrew. He was powerful. He was the ruler of the most powerful country at that time in the world. He was the only country in the region which was not going through a famine. They had food.
Which country was that?
This was Egypt. Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. And now, Joseph introduces. Now, Joseph himself was no slouch. He was put together. He was a ruler. He was second to king. He was wise, if not wiser, than Pharaoh. Pharaoh told him everything's yours except for the throne. Made a very clear distinction between that. So he introduces half of his brothers because he didn't want it to be so overwhelming to Pharaoh. And then he introduces his father. His father comes in. And Pharaoh asks, and I'll quote to you the verse. The verse is in chapter 47, verses 8 and verses 9. Pharaoh says, Vayomer Paro al Yaakov, kama yemei shenei chayecha. Pharaoh tells Jacob, how many are the days of the years of your life? The days of the years of your life. Tell me, how old are you? How old are you? If I ask you how old are you, when you're young, you say I'm 15 and a half. It means only half a year away from getting my independent driver's license. But once you pass 16 or 18 or 21, you're 21 till the day before you turn 22. Pharaoh's asking him, how many of the days of the years of your life did he want, like to the day? I'm 100 years old and 257 days old. No, obviously not. Pharaoh was expecting something very great from Jacob. Because Pharaoh represented the leadership and the god, he considered himself a god, of that idolatrous, physical, it's definitely pre-Greek and Roman Empire, but it's that concept of the body, of power, of wealth, of idols. So he was a great person, and he was expecting, just as if not greater, from the father and the patriarch, the leader, of where Joseph comes from. So when someone asks you, what are the days of the years of your life? They want to know, because that's all he expected was, are you using every single day of every single week of every single month of every single year of your life to its fullest? That's a very deep way for Pharaoh. So don't ever think Pharaoh was any dummy. He was a midget, definitely was, but he was no dummy. He was asking a very direct and specific question. And look at the answer Jacob gives. And now, even though for the intent and the purpose of learning and applying it to our lives, we're going to criticize Jacob, but by no means do we have any right to. Whenever the commentaries criticize any of our great Torah characters, it's not to put them down. It's to show, first of all, they're human. They go through struggles, so do we. And they are judged on a much higher level than any one of us will ever be judged, to our great merit, believe me. And it's only to take out that nuance of a lesson of their punishment and apply them to us. So look at what Jacob answers. Vayomer Yaakov el Paro, Jacob answers Paro, Yemei shenei megurai, the days of the years of my life, sheloshim umat shana, 130 years. Me'at v'ra'im, very short and bad, being pessimistic. Hayu yemei shenei chayai, my years were short and bad. V'lo isigu et yemei shenei chayai avotai b'mei megurehem, and I did not live to the capacity of my father and my grandfather. Very hard. We explained how hard of a life Jacob had. No picnic, no piece of cake. But still, at his level, for him to answer this, God takes off from his years. And he takes off 33 years. And where does 33 come? Count the words. If you count the words, there are 33 words. But wait, I'm going to count them with you. Now, not only count the words, it wasn't even count the words Jacob said, because Jacob didn't say 33 words, but more than that, it's count the words of the way the Torah depicts the conversation. I'm going to go to the second verse first. Vayomer, count with me. Vayomer Yaakov el Paro yemei shenei megurai sheloshim umat shana. That's 10. Me'at v'ra'im hayu yemei shenei chayai velo isigu et yemei shenei chayai avotai b'imei migurehem. 25. Good? That's only 25. So even though we're counting 25, okay? We're missing 8. We need 33. Even though we're counting the way the Torah depicts it, because Jacob said less than 25 words, but we're counting the way the Torah depicted it, and we're only at 25 words. So where are we going to get to 33? Go to the previous verse. Vayomer Paro el Yaakov kama yemei shenei chayecha. There's your other 8. That's your 33. And now, I'm sure most of us, any of us who have a little bit of hair left, are ready to rip out our hair and say, what is going on? What is going on? 33 words for the 33 years that were taken away from him. Not only what he said, the way the Torah depicts it, and also what Paro says and the way the Torah depicts that. Enough, give me a break. He's not such an evil person. Again, he's Jacob, our forefather. So listen to an amazing concept our sages teach us. When you meet somebody, I would suggest highly, if you shake their hand, or if they're the opposite gender, you wave politely. I would highly suggest not to ask them, how old are you? And even if you want to be nice and say, how many are the days of the years of your life? And then they look at you and say, are you normal? Are you living on planet Earth? It's not. You don't ask someone how old they are. What prompted Paro to ask that question? It's because of something Jacob must have done. Jacob has been depicted to Paro by Joseph, his son, over the past 22 years a certain way. Well, truth is not all 22 years, the past 9 years. 7, since Paro and Joseph met. the 7 years of plenty and the 2 years of famine. So over the past 9 years, Paro has been expecting something from Joseph's father. Nothing less than Joseph, only more. And what do his eyes fall on? They fall on a man who, according to his calculations, looks much older than he should be. Well, if he's the father of Joseph, Joseph is only 39 years old, so he must be in his 130s, give or take. Back then, it's normal. Right, it's just easy. But this man looks like he's 330. Back then, when you started hitting 130, that's when you're thinking about retirement. You're still alive and kicking. Nowadays, you're getting 50 and you're like, okay, I got 10 years to work, but maybe not. But again, in South Florida, who works? But anyways, this man looks way older than he should be. So that's the first startling question Paro has. How old are you? Jacob gave reason to Paro to ask such a question. Jacob unfortunately did not pay attention that his appearance at that moment specifically was public property. Others were looking. Others were expecting. Now, how did Jacob get to this? Jacob had a hard life, but at his level, he did not live with enough. And again, I'm saying we're criticizing to bring it down to us, not to criticize Jacob. He did not live with enough faith. He did not live with enough emunah. Of that whole roller coaster, we named at least 10 things, and that's a couple things we just said. There's plenty more midrashim and plenty more things that he went through. Those roller coasters, every time it went down, he didn't have enough faith, enough emunah. He didn't have enough simcha, enough happiness to go through them, and it let him get weighed down. He started wearing himself down from each and every blow and hit he was taking. And he started aging. And he started developing a hunchback. He started not caring about what and how he's wearing and presenting himself. And at his level, he was punished for that. He was not only punished for complaining, because by the way, he had all the reason to complain. You think your life's hard? Think of Jacob's. He had all the reason to complain. He didn't have flights to catch or flights to miss. He was going by foot and traveling with all of his wealth, which was cattle and sheep, and his children and his wives. And he was running and fleeing and losing some along the way. Family members included. It was very hard. He had all the reason to be sad and down. But he let it affect him. If he would have had more faith and more emunah, he would have been able to get through it. If he would have had more simcha, more happiness, he could have and would have been able to get through it. Our Chachamim tell us a great, great lesson. It's something that our Chachamim say. It's something that a lot of, if not all of our modern day motivational speakers are telling us, Jewish and non-Jewish alike. They're telling us, when someone asks you, how are you doing? There's levels which, based on how you answer, depend on how you're really feeling. If someone says they're doing fine, it means they're doing bad. If you ever walk home and you say, honey, how you doing? Fine? Bad. Just get it, and know it well, okay? Those 3 letters are changed for those 4 letters, and if fine is the only word you're getting, you're lucky. Then there's answering, I'm doing good. Good means fine. Okay, change it. Okay? Good is fine. Number 3 is great. Great means okay. Still not too good. And then there's that 4th and ultimate level. How you doing? I'm doing amazing. If you say you're doing amazing, you're doing good. You're doing great at best. But train yourself to say and to answer that you're doing amazing. If you do that, it will become a reality. The worst things happening to you, think of whatever it could be. Health-wise, emotional-wise, family-wise, financial-wise. How you doing? Amazing! If you wake up in the morning, this is scientifically proven. Our sages told us this centuries ago. And over the past century, every greatest motivational speaker has made millions, if not billions, on this concept. Get ready. I'm going to teach it to you tonight. Most of you might have heard it, but it always helps to hear it again. Wake up in the morning and set yourself up for success. Get up as a Jew. The first thing we do is look up and say, Modeh ani lefanecha. Thank you, God, for giving me back my soul and giving me my life back. That's putting your first step forward, your right foot first. You're starting off with a good day. And here's something else that it does not say in the Shulchan Aruch, but I promise if you do it, you'll only see good. Go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, I look good, I look young, I look strong, and I feel that I'm ready for a day of success. I am capable. And look at yourself when you're doing it. Look in the mirror and say, I am tall. Even though you're 4 feet tall, it doesn't matter. I am skinny. Even though you're obese. You will be tall. You will be skinny. You will be happy. You will be successful. You will stay young and you will feel good. Just say it. It will be true. What, do you think some people are just born better looking than others? And some people age faster than others? Yes, there's definitely a scientific and physical meaning to all that. But it's on how you feel. It's on how you treat yourself. My grandfather, may he be blessed to live till 120. And when I mention 120 to him, he tells me, don't curse me, I'm going to live way longer than that. And anyone who knows my grandfather, my father's father, knows that he really means it.
Did he live up to 120?
He's 85 now, he's going to go more than 120 according to himself. So never tell him till 120. So, he's 85. You look at him, you get to know him, you would date him easily 20 years younger. Now that's a big difference, 65 to 85, especially at that age. That's all the difference. But why? If you ask him, if he knew that I was telling everyone how old he is, he'd probably smack me for it. Because it's one of his secrets, amongst others which we can't share now. I have my parents in the room, my wife, my brother. We know what we're talking about. Great secrets, nothing bad, obviously. So listen to, when you ask him, Pops, how old are you? He says, I'm 18 with 60-something years of experience. And he really feels it. He treats himself like a strong and healthy 18-year-old. He's much wiser than one. That's the beauty about aging. When you're able to still feel young, yet act smart, you now are extremely powerful in setting yourself up for success. We can't run against time, can't run against the clock. We can mitigate the aging. We can feel as young as possible. If you get up in the morning, you look at yourself and say, I am happy. I just had the worst day yesterday. Literally. Your kids got home, bad grades. You just had a fight at work. You fell asleep arguing with your spouse. You wake up, you say Modani, you look in the mirror, you say, I'm happy. I'm having a great day today. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to be skinny. I am happy, and you will be. That's something that Jacob at his level unfortunately overlooked, and what led him to not live to his fullest capacity in years. He did pass away shy 33 years because of this. But I want to go deeper. If we look at this, the beginning of this week's Torah portion, the Torah starts off by telling us that Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that means he was 33 when he came in, like we said. And he lived to a capacity of 147 years. What does that mean? That means that he dies. It means he passes away. No. The Torah has a lot to tell us about Jacob's life now. The Torah goes on and says, the next verse, that Jacob summons his son Joseph, the most powerful of his sons, and tells him, do me a favor, promise, and then he makes him take an oath. Do not bury me in this country. Take me back to my homeland. The Torah doesn't tell it to us as it was a conversation. The Torah tells us like it's happening now. So the Torah tells us he dies. He lives till 147. Then he's having a conversation with Joseph. And the conversation continues, and then Jacob is lamenting over his life a little bit, over the loss of his mother, Rachel, Joseph's mother, Jacob's favorite wife. And then the Torah continues, and I'll quote to you the beginning of chapter 48. Vayechi acharei hadavrim haeleh. After all of this conversation, Vayomer leYosef hinei avicha choleh. It was told to Joseph that his father is sick, that Jacob is sick. Vayikach et shnei banav imo et Menashe v'et Ephraim. And Joseph brings his two children with him to Joseph takes his two children, Menashe and Ephraim, to his father Jacob to get a blessing before he passes away. The Midrash tells us, Vayechi acharei hadavrim haeleh, and after these things happened, means it was a long time. It wasn't like one day to the next. It was a long time. And then after that, they get the blessing, and then Jacob summons each of his children and blesses all 12 of them. So the Zera Shimshon's question, listen to the question of the night. His question is, why are we told that Jacob passes away long before he actually passes away? There are many things happening after that fact. Good question. It's a fair question. Listen to his answer. He says, this verse in the Torah, our first verse of this week's Parashat, is coming as a proof to something spooky the Talmud tells us. The Talmud tells us that Jacob never passed away. And that's something very hard to swallow. Jacob never passed away. I recall there being a eulogy, mummification, burial, crying, all these hard things and sad things because of the passing of Jacob. And the Talmud comes and says he never passed away. So the Maharsha, one of the commentaries on the Talmud, before answering that question, he asks another question. He says, why does the Talmud only tell us that Jacob never passed away? What about Abraham? What about Isaac? Did they pass away? Well, if the Talmud doesn't tell us that they didn't, so it means that they did. What was different about Jacob compared to Abraham and Isaac? He answers and says, look at all of their children. Look at Abraham's children. Abraham had 2 children. Well, at least in the beginning. He had more later. But he had 2 main children. He had Ishmael and he had Isaac. Was he 100% connected to Ishmael? No. He was connected to Isaac. He had a sour child and a starved child. Look at Isaac. Isaac had 2 children. He had a sour child and he had a starved child. He tried to prevent that, tried to change that, wasn't able to. Look at Jacob's children. He was 12 for 12 out of his boys. He had Dinah. According to the Midrash, he had many more children. But at least for his 13 children, he was on target for all of them. What does it mean he was on target with all of them? He lived with each and every one of them. And more importantly, he connected to each and every one of them. During his life, to which after he physically passes away, his soul and his spirit was not able to detach from them. He continued to live with them. And that's what the Talmud means by Jacob never passed away. He never passed away because he was with them forevermore, blessing them, guarding them, watching over them, being there with them in their happy times and in their sad times. Always there with them. This is what the Zera Shimshon says. The first verse of our Torah portion this week is giving a proof to. That even though the Torah tells us how old he passes away at, 147, the Torah itself is going on and continuing and telling us more about Jacob's life. The same way he didn't pass away when the Torah said he passed away, and the Torah itself kept on talking about it, even by the end of the Parashat, where it's almost obvious that he passed away, that was only him passing away physically. His body was here no more, but spiritually, his soul continued to live on with his children, grandchildren, and descendants forevermore. That means something great to all of us. Like we mentioned earlier, we are all the children of Jacob. We're not called Bnei Avraham, although we're all the children of Avraham also. We're not called Bnei Yitzhak. We're not Bnei Moshe, Bnei Yehuda. We are Bnei Israel. We are all the children of Jacob, who was upgraded to the name of Israel first by the angel of Esav and blessed by him, and then by God himself. By being the child of Jacob, the child of Israel, we have to internalize that we are the son or daughter of Jacob himself, and that he is with us. He got through his hard times. At his level, he maybe should have rise to a higher occasion. But he's there with us, carrying us, helping us, praying for us, watching over us. For one reason and one reason only. Because we are his children. We are Bnei Israel, Benot Israel. That's who we are. And when we realize that he never passed away, he's physically not here, we can't touch him, we can't hear him, but we could learn about him. We could learn from him, from his strong points and from maybe his points which are a little weaker, that we could perfect ourselves, as we did this evening. That's something empowering. That's something worth getting up for in the morning and saying, when you look in the mirror, I'm a son of Jacob. I'm a daughter of Jacob. Add that to your routine. Makes you feel connected. Makes you feel connected to God. I want to end off with one more thing. Michael, do I have a little more time? Another hour? Okay.
That would be perfect.
I'm here all day.
I have one more thing I want to share, and it'd be worth it. If anyone has to go, they could go. Why is no one leaving?
They like your speech. No, 1 hour more, come on.
Let's continue with this concept of Jacob. And let's now take a look at what the room looked like, or what was going on when Joseph brought his 2 sons to Jacob to get their final blessing from their grandfather. I'll quote to you the verse. The verse says, in chapter 48, verses 8 and 9. Vayar Israel et Bnei Yosef. So Israel, Jacob, is on his deathbed, and Joseph comes running in with his children. And Jacob sees them. Vayomer mi'ele. He asks, who are they? I'm going to take a pause. Who are they? You've been living with them day in, day out for the past 17 years. Let's continue. Vayomer Yosef el aviv. Joseph tells his father, Banaihem asher natan li Elokim bazeh. These are my children to which God gave me. These are my gifts from God. Then he says, okay, Vayomar. Yaakov says, Kachem na elai v'abarechem. Okay, bring them forth, now they're worthy for blessing. What is going on? I mean, the verse, the Torah, is telling us something which almost makes no sense. So thank God we have many commentaries. We have Rashi who explains as well that Jacob looks at them and he starts questioning, are these 2 kids worthy of a very powerful and strong blessing? Better yet, what blessing are they worthy of? It's imagine like Esav. If Esav would have got the blessings Isaac had in store for him, it would have been very detrimental for the Jewish people. It was all divinely ordained that it didn't turn out that way. So Jacob's thinking to himself, imagine I give supercharged, powerful blessings to my 2 grandchildren who may not be worthy. So he's asking, Mi ele, who are these? Now the Zera Shimshon explains 3 different options of doubt that Jacob could have had. The first was, well, maybe these kids are really blemished and they're not worthy of the blessing. Second is, well, maybe their mother is blemished and not worthy of the blessing. Or number 3, Joseph, maybe you were not so pure and holy after all these years in Egypt, and maybe you're not fulfilling that level, unfortunately transferred on to your children, and now they're not befitting of this blessing. So look at what Joseph answers. Joseph tells his father, these are the children God gave me, bazeh, with this. This word bazeh is very superfluous in this verse. What's bazeh? So Rashi gives one interpretation. I want to first give the interpretation of the Zera Shimshon and then move on to Rashi, because Zera Shimshon gives both answers. But before I give that answer, I want to share one of the most interesting midrashim that I've ever heard. So Joseph is taken out on Rosh Hashanah at 30 years old out of jail. He's shaved, he's groomed, he's dressed, and he's brought to Paro. And he meets him, he hears the dream, he interprets it, Paro falls in love with him, gives him everything, ranks him up to number 2 in the whole country. And then he says, okay, he wants to show him off to everybody. This is your new ruler. This is who you need to answer to. This is who I'm putting above everyone. And he has him walk through a parade through the whole land of Egypt. And everyone comes out to see him. And they're all blessing and praising Joseph for giving power and interpretation to his dream and for becoming the new viceroy. What happens? Everyone comes out and they're trying to gain his attention. Better yet, all the girls hear that he's single. So they're hoping that they might, meet him, get to know him. Marry a viceroy? Why not? So everyone comes out and they're all trying to gain attention. So men are trying to gain his attention for their daughters to get married to him, or a sister. The girls themselves are trying to gain attention for themselves to get an opportunity to go on a date with the viceroy. I mean, come on. So everyone starts throwing stuff. They throw gold coins. They throw rings, stamps, personal items. And Joseph was not interested. Joseph guarded his eyes. That was something he was known for. He just looked down. He just kept on walking. He had to do what Paro said. Paro said walk through and meet everyone. He did. And the girls were really trying to gain his attention. To keep it clean, but they were even trying to throw personal items at him to gain his attention. Amivin Yavin. And he was completely not paying attention until he gets clogged on his head with something different than everything else. There's two midrashim. One interpretation was it was a kmeah, which I'll explain what that is. Another interpretation, it was a specific golden chain, necklace. To whichever version you want to learn the midrash, he picks it up, and if it was a kmeah, which was a pouch with a parchment inside, or if you want to learn that it was a golden chain, he picks it up and he looks and he sees his father's handwriting. He's like, where did this come from? He picks it up in front of everybody, the moment they were waiting for. He picks this up and he says, whose is this? And everyone's embarrassed. A dinky chain, a note, a kmeah. No one wanted to claim it. One girl claims it. He says, come forth. And he meets a very special individual, very special girl. Who this girl was, let's take you back. Take you back to when Dinah was assaulted by Shem. She got pregnant. She had a baby. When she gave birth, even though Shimon and Levi seemingly had their revenge to what was done to their sister and wiped out the city of Shechem, they still came to their father Jacob and said, we are not having this impure child part of our family. They wanted to kill her. Their own niece. And Jacob couldn't. It's a human being. The daughter of his daughter. So he convinced his own children to at least sell her as a slave. At least let her live. But before leaving, he blessed her and he wrote with his own handwriting words of blessing to protect her going into slavery. Osnat, for years, she was younger than Josef, but she was around the same age, maybe a couple years younger. She was holding on to this. This was her connection to her family. She was willing to risk it to gain the attention of her uncle. She threw it at him. They met, and they were married. So you know what Joseph was saying? He says, these are my children that God gave me. Bazeh. He picks up his wife's either kmeah or golden chain and says, this is where she's from. She's your granddaughter. She's from you. She has your blessing. This is the mother of my children. And I was committed to her. She was committed to me. And these are the products. These two fine children, Menashe and Ephraim. And then he blesses them. But in light of tonight, and in special merit of my dear friend and soon-to-be brother Michael, I want to say another interpretation. I want to say Rashi's interpretation with something extra that I think is very important as husbands to know. We're going to pick on the husband tonight, okay? My wife's here. It's always better to pick on the husband in front of your wife. You don't pick on the wife in front of your wife. But it's for a good reason, and it's the true reason. Rashi says, you know what Joseph did? He picked up his ketubah. That's what bazeh is. He says, here's the proof. I went so far to write a marriage document, which is a rabbinical obligation between my wife and I, to forge and commit our commitment to one another. Abba, I'm still pure. I'm holy, and these children come from a holy marriage, a pure parents. That's what he did. And then Jacob's doubts of, are these children worth the blessing or not worth the blessing? Did he stay pure? Did he marry right? All went to bed. Joseph went far to do something that was superfluous. This is pre the Torah, pre the rabbis, pre the rabbinical obligation of writing a ketubah. And he went so forth to want to keep his marriage sanctified, and he wrote it. So in honor of tonight, I want to tell us husbands what could have been a decade ago or a couple decades ago, what we signed on when we got married. A couple of basics. And to stop and think, are we fulfilling them? If not, let's start. If we are, can we do better at it? Don't worry, next week we'll pick on the women. This week we're picking on the men. Okay? The Torah tells us that there are 3 things that a man obligates himself to his wife when he betroths her. The Hebrew words are she'era, kesuta, ve'onata. She'era means that he promises to feed her, to give her a place to live, to provide for her. Kesuta means to clothe her. And onata means to give her time, to speak to her, to commit to building a family and having children with her. These are the 3 basic obligations that a man has towards his wife when he gets married with her. But in the ketubah, there's even more than that. The ketubah says that he will provide for her in every way possible, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Won't choose to move without speaking to his wife and doing it with his wife together. Promises not to take another wife without her consent, which in brackets you will not get. And you don't want. Promise in that ketubah that if God forbid this relationship has to end, that you will not withhold a divorce document. And more than that, that actually how much compensation will you give to her if that relationship has to end? These are all obligations the husband has for his wife, to provide for her a good life, happy life, build a family. These are all things that Joseph showed his father that he was committed to his wife. And then Joseph said, these kids are deserving of the blessing. May God bless us, bless our wives, bless our husbands, bless our children. When we know that we are the children of Jacob, and Jacob is living with us, and he's there watching us, may his merit, and may the merit of the Zera Shimshon, who were learning his holy Torah, all stand for us, for our children, for our families, our friends, our community. Be blessed and happy. And say you're happy, feel happy, say you're successful, say you're looking and feeling young, and you will be so. Amen v'amen.
Amen.